Stop selling, because your prospects should be pricing themselves into $12,000 per month packages themselves. They actually do, and I'll show you exactly how. Because you just show them one simple gap, they squirm, and the second that they feel that gap, really feel it, they start asking you what it costs to catch up. So you don't have to price anything up, they price themselves. This is the $12,000 gap close, the thing nobody's talking about, and the easiest high ticket close you'll likely ever run yourself. So let's get to it. Now with that said, my name is Jay Cruz and I help agencies to scale super quickly, build recurring income. Well, if you do nothing else on a call, you should do one main thing. For me, has captured every prospect's attention. Better than, I'm gonna show you what we can do and tell me your problems and all that shit, which we do. And again, you can watch videos that we have on our channel about that, because we do things in a very different way. But if I had to pick one thing, what would it be, right? And it's always creating the gap, because that gets a business owner's attention every single time. And it goes as follows. I'll say something like, hey, Jack, whatever the name is, let me ask you one question. Who is the biggest competitor you have? And I'm talking about a competitor that bugs the shit out of you, that you are looking at and thinking, how the hell are they at the level they're at, Jay? How do they have that much organic traffic? And, they seem to be all over the internet. What's going on? What are they doing that we're not, right? And demystifying what their competitors are doing is worth just, shitloads of money for them, right? Because that insight or those insights are huge for a business, because it's likely keeping them up at night. And if you're speaking to a real, serious business owner who wants to grow and has got to a certain level, that's the kind of conversation they want to have, right? Like, oh, okay, you know what they're doing? Really interesting. And so I normally start with that. Like, who is a pain in your butt that you look at and you think, how the fuck are they doing this, right? They give me the competitor and I'm like, well, if you've got 4 or 5, that would be really, helpful. And so typically they do that. And as an example here, somebody I was speaking to has given me and emailed me a competitor list. It's quite extensive, but I'll use just the first little batch here. And then what we want to do is go to our AMP competitor comparison tool. It's completely free. And we've made that clear just in case, it wasn't clear beforehand. But all you've got to do is go to amplify.com, as you can see here, right? And I'll actually take you through the process so you can find this. And this tool is incredible, honestly. It's one of the most powerful things we have. Go to Learning Center, free tools. We've got lots of free tools on here, by the way. Feel free to have a look at those. And we've got it right here. We've just published it recently. It's the latest one, right? So I click on this and you've got access to it. Okay, so now it says max 10 domains. And I've obviously got about 4 or 5 there. So I'll bring them over, copy and paste, right? And that's it. And let's say I'm talking to one of these businesses. I'll get into that in a second. And the rest are just competitors, for instance, right? So let's do that and let's hit submit. And by the way, you can use lots of different traffic tools. This combines a lot of them and gives you a nice little average, because some traffic tools will give you slightly different domain rating or authority or slightly different traffic stats. But this will hit the trend generally, right? And be quite accurate as to the proportions and the gaps between the different domains. Right now, so you can see the breakdown here. So you can see a lovely, lovely spread. You've got the domain listed on the left. You've got the dates to the right here, which is not so important. And then you've got the organic traffic. Now this is essential, right? This is everything, because this is what they're trying to improve and trying to increase, right? And so let's say we're talking to this business here, which is bmimd.com. Let's say they're the prospect that we're in conversation with. They're at 280 organic traffic, right? And they probably want to catch the likes of Try Eden, for example, here. And Try Eden, you can see, are at 15,000 organic traffic, right? A month on average. Now, 280 to 15,000, I don't know what that is. It's way more than 10x. It's like 20 or 30x or something. My maths isn't the greatest, but yeah, that's still, anything above 10x is huge as a gap, right? Now, do you think that the owner of this business, if they're serious, the one thing that they want to know is what the competitors are doing. They're thinking about it day and night, and likely, because they've given you the competitor list, they're like, oh, holy shit, yeah, they're killing us, right? So what are they doing? And now they want you to explain why that number is so high and what they can do to close that gap. Bam, right? But let me explain further, because we've got things like domain authority and all of this stuff links together in terms of how we present this, because what we do is we provide organic traffic for businesses by creating content which answers actual buyer questions during that buyer journey, and then turns that question into a topic. 8 formats we repurpose into, not regurgitated, but actually answering questions in every format, unique to every unique pieces of content for like videos, short form, long form, blogs. You've got podcast, interview style, all generated automatically. It's crazy. infographics, you've got articles for news sites, you name it, right? Flip books, yeah, on and on it goes. Anyway, so we'll create that and then we'll publish to 300 sites. So that's what we do. So obviously this is in line with that, but this is still going to work really well because they're going to want to know how they can increase the organic traffic, which will increase their sales. So you've got the domain rating here, or authority, you've got backlinks in total, you've got unique domains, referring IPs, indexed pages, which is key as well. And I'll talk about that why in a sec, and brand mentions, okay? And then you've got keyword ranking as well. Now, this isn't as presentable as I'd like it to be. So if you're speaking to a prospect will tend to get very distracted and lost here. So to make this more presentable, I just download the results. Okay, it will come in the form of a CSV file. And then what I want to do is go into Claude, and then I want to get my prompt, copy and paste. And then what I want to say is, I have attached a previous bar chart that you did. So I'm going to copy that over. So paste, this is just a previous bar chart, it's done. Again, we can provide all this stuff for you, just let us know. Okay, so once it's there, that's the previous bar chart as an example of what the work that Claude has done in the past. You've got the prompt in there. And the only thing left to do then is add the actual company. So the main company that we're talking to, that we're doing the comparison with, is going to be this one. We nicely just add that in. It's all self-explanatory, right? We want to also add the CSV file, of course, that we downloaded earlier from the competitor analysis. It's right here. So we can open that up. And then, boom, off we go. So let's see what Claude comes up with and what it conjures up in just a second here. So it's ruminating, what a word, right? And voila, look at that. Look how beautiful and sexy that looks. Now it's in the form or in a form that we can share with the prospect, right? And obviously you're gonna do all this before the call, right? That you have with the prospect. They would have sent the competitor analysis in. If you wanna see how we structure the calls, again, watch 60K in 6 months. We're way beyond that now, we're like past 100K, but recurring income. But if you want to watch that, you can check it out. So 60K recurring in 6 months, that video. We break down the entire call process. But so when you come back, you got the call, you're presenting the information to them, and they're like, you speak to them and say, look, I did the analysis for the competitors. So then we present it to them and I say, hey, Stephen, Paul, Jack, Susan, whatever the name is, what do you see? And this is the question I always ask, very important. What do you notice here? Because again, I don't want to feed you information and talk at you, I want to talk with you. What patterns do you see? Because ultimately, what do we want to increase? We want to increase the traffic, which is the pink bar. You're here, here's your competitors. What patterns, if any, do you see or notice when it comes to the pink bar and increasing that? Like, do you see anything in there? I just want to ask if that's cool. And typically they'll jump in and go, well, I don't know. And you're like, look, it's fine, just have a try. And then I can explain it to you, no problem. I just want you to really, take this in and digest it. And then typically they'll come back and say, okay, well, if you're asking me, I would say if the DA is typically higher, the traffic is higher because, and that matches other than for Tri-Eden at 36 here. And they're an outlier and I'll explain why in a sec. But typically, yeah, I see domain rating being higher. And if domain rating is higher, so is the traffic. And then of course, if the pages are higher, so is the traffic, right? Typically, other than Tri-Eden, which I'll explain. But typically these two, and I've included Tri-Eden for a reason, I'll explain in a sec. So the pattern is if you have more domain rating, you have more pages, then you'll have more traffic, right? Which is here. And of course, more keywords will equate to more traffic as well, compared to what they have. Now, what's really interesting about this is Tri-Eden is a little bit of an outlier, and I'll talk about that. But what do you think they're thinking now? They're obviously thinking, and we get questions like this all the time. They'll say, Jay, well, that sounds interesting. So how do we increase domain rating? Well, to increase domain rating, typically you'll have to do off-site content, right? To bring authority to the site. And guess what we do as part of Amplify's offering is we do off-site content in every format and post it to 300 sites, which is unique content, not regurgitated. So then they're like, oh, interesting. I'm like, the more of those you do, the faster you'll catch up with domain rating, but it's not guaranteed in terms of how quickly you'll do that. But of course, the more off-site content you do, the faster you'll catch up. But anyway, what else do you notice? And they'll say, yeah, the number of pages. Of course, we're getting outgunned with the number of pages here. We have 436, they have 1,000, right? And these guys have 3,000. Like, what do we do there? And I'm like, well, typically, if we go to Agents RX, here they are. Okay, so Agents RX, big brand, decent sized business. And I'll say, well, the number of pages on site, typically, yes, it could be SKUs, and product pages and things like this, and about pages and all that kind of stuff and how we work. But by and large, to get to the 3,000, 4,000s, you're probably looking at a blog and the amount of content that they're posting on there. And yep, just as suspected, look, June the 20th, July the 14th, August, they're posting a lot of content here, constantly. And so what am I seeding in their brain? I'm seeding, well, they need to post content on the site, right? And so, I mean, there's a lot more, to it than that, because, in case you're wondering with the Try Eden thing, I'll explain that too, because you might be wondering why, despite having, despite having less domain rating and less pages, why is their traffic higher than, let's say, Ageless RX, when it should be the other way around? The reason they're an outlier is because the number of pages they have is bringing them more traffic. So the reason for that is because the pages they're putting out are quality driven, right? They're more quality pages, because typically Ageless RX is on, doing pages like this, which is terrible. 6 risk factors that impact your longevity. No one is going to type that into Google as a question. That isn't solving any need. And in 2025 into 26, I've talked about this in other videos, you need to create content that answers actual questions, right? That's what feeds Google. That's what feeds the LLMs, because Google is looking for brands and businesses who are answering questions that buyers have, because it solves a problem, but also putting out content that people are, needing and wanting, as opposed to content the brand thinks people need and want. You see the difference? And the more you fix problems for people in depth with really, really cool questions that they might have, and there's thousands of underserved questions, the more you show that you give a shit about the marketplace, you give a shit about your audience, and you're providing information, you're helping Google out, and you're helping the LLMs. And of course, if you publish this content and answers to these questions in as many places on the internet as possible, of course, the LLMs have no choice but to draw from your content, right? Because you've answered all these questions, you become the expert, and it has a snowball effect. Now, what's interesting about that is, we've got tons and tons of people, customers of ours, who are using Ampcast AI by Amplifier, and getting into the AI overviews without any of this bullshit, having to game the system or, have shortcuts or feed the LLMs. You don't need to feed the LLMs or engineer a way to. You just create good fucking content that answers questions people have, and you post it everywhere, and you repeat the process. SEO is dead. The old way of doing shit is done. Google's bar is higher than ever before. And it's absolutely massacring sites who are not doing this right now. And, to survive and to thrive into 2026, it's very, very important that you do that. So that's the future of how you get traffic organically from Google, from the LLMs, without having to pay for ads, because of course people do the research and you're covering it. Anyway, not only is the headline here shit that no one's ever going to type into Google and doesn't answer any questions, this one is really interesting, because if we go to theirs, they've got a Sermorelin dosage chart and calculator. So this is, I think, a weight loss drug. And of course, people are going to want to know how much to take, right? So they're going to want to ask what the calculator, what the chart is, and look at the content. Immediately different. Key takeaways, lovely. It's got a doctor there. What is Sermorelin answering a question? It's long form. It's broken down. Look at this lovely graph here. And it's got a CTA, which is, again, people think that you shouldn't sell within content. You should, because Google wants you to provide a solution, right? But just do it in a way where you balance that fine interplay between good value and promotional content. But if you're giving good value, 100%, you should offer the solution, because that's part of the value, right? Because that's what they're looking for, and it can solve their problem. But look, it goes on and on and on. Compare this to this content, doesn't match up. And I'll give you another example. This is why, again, coming back to this, why Try Eden is absolutely smashing it with the pieces they have, even having, despite having less domain rating. And typically, if you have higher domain rating, your pages that you have will index and rank, because Google, you've got trust with Google, and on it goes, right? So I'll be explaining all of this. And guess what? I'm not even selling to the client. I'm just explaining this. And now they're thinking, shit, I need to increase my domain rating quickly. I need to catch these guys. How can I do that? And I'm showing them all of this stuff, right? If you look at this, some of these are not great, actually, like the role of B6 and B12 in metabolic health and energy. There's better ones than that I saw, like what is semaglutide, insights for first-time patients, what to know before trying. Yeah, these are good. How long do semaglutide side effects last? That's a good one. Anything that answers questions and typically has a question at the end is good. Like, so some of these are not fantastic, and you can see they've been blasting out a lot of content, which is why their traffic is probably going to curve off a little bit if they don't improve that quality. Because again, Google's bar is higher than ever before. What used to rank 18 months ago is not ranking anymore, because Google's had enough, right? Just remember that. Anyway, coming back to this, right? So as I present this to them, that's not it. I'll just download the chart here and then zoom in a little bit, right? So you can see here, right? As I'm taking them through it, so this is how you master, okay, presenting solutions which are expensive, and you've now anchored it, and this is very important. You've anchored the pricing to the problem without even revealing pricing yet, right? Because you're still discussing things like how to get the domain rating up. That's offsite content, and then increasing pages is just blogging on their site. And then I'll explain. Then they'll say, well, how much? And this is the magic question: how many posts do we need to do, and how much content do we need to do to increase the domain rating and number of pages? And I'll be like, well, how fast do you want to catch your competitors, right? And they'll be like, damn, we've got a budget for this, and they'll get all serious and be like, I want to go for it. In 12 months, I want to be catching them up. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to do a serious amount of content because look, they've got 1,000 pages, you've got 486. If you blog 10 times every week, that's, 520 blogs, I think, at the end of the year. But guess what? You'll still just be tying with them, but they're also going to do a lot of, and add more pages throughout the year. So, that might get you close, but then the domain rating means it caps the amount of pages you're going to index that Google will allow to send traffic to and actually, give love to or send love to, in which case, then they're like, well, how do you increase the domain rating? So now I'm packaging it up, right? I'm like, well, you'll have to do offsite campaigns and then you'll do onsite campaigns. And then they're like, well, okay, how much? And I'm like, look, we'll get to that in a second. Let me just make sure I've nailed your problem down. I really understand where you're at as a business, where you want to go, and the biggest thing holding you back. And then we'll get there. Is that cool? Because I can't just price this up without knowing. And in fact, we'll leave the commercials to the end because I want to make sure I've nailed your problem down. Is that cool with you? They respect that straight away, right? And then I'll typically come back and say, okay, so let's get into the pricing side of things. And what's really awesome is this is a quick example of some of the pricing. This is just dummy pricing, if you like, right? But just to give you an example here today, if you're starting at 6,000 a month, suddenly they're asking you and saying, well, how do I catch them? How fast? And then you'll be like, well, how fast do you want to catch them? They're saying 12 months. You're like, well, that's a lot of content. What did I say? I said 520 pieces, right? For the year, 10 pieces a month. And 10 pieces is blogs, for instance. Yeah, ignore the rest for now. But what do you notice? Like the blogs at 8, that's close to 10, that's at 12,000 a month. Yes, they get all this other stuff, which leads me into, oh, you wanted to increase your domain rating too, because you're going to have to do that, otherwise the blogs won't rank. And so to do that and to catch your competitors, you're probably going to need to do a serious amount of offsite. And that's what we call AMP campaigns, which is repurposing content in every format, 8 formats, 300 sites being published to. And you can probably, for the amount, we switch things over. For example, the way we work is each AMP campaign is worth 3 blogs, so we can switch them over depending on what they need. But I will definitely, then they'll say to me, so we want to catch them fast. You're saying we need to do a lot more offsite because we're lagging behind with the domain rating. And of course, we want to do about 10 posts. So, I want to be looking at between the Scale Lite and Scale Pro then, right? And I'm like, you said it. Again, they've priced themselves. I haven't gone in there. What I hate about salespeople is like, oh, you probably need this. It's like, no, you let them lead it. You give them your expertise. You lead them through. You're the authority, of course, but it's up to them based on, this magical piece of content that we've produced and data we produced, which allows them to make the decisions themselves. That's the beauty of it, right? Because that subtle change of, hey, you should do the 12 grand package. They're going to be like, well, what other packages do you have? And then you've got a 6 grand and they're like, well, of course you want to push me on a higher one, right? Whereas here, I'm like, you tell me and I'll price it up. It's like, the more content you'll do, the more volume and the more, intense you are with that, the more results you're going to get and the faster the results you'll get. So then they say, right, well, what can we do for, you're saying 10 pieces, I want to do 10 pieces a month. And offsite, how many do you recommend to catch them up? And I'll be like, well, typically if you're at 15 to get to 48, which is where you want to be for a boutique business, domain rating of 40 to 50 is perfect. Then you start really pinging, right? I mean, the huge brands like Samsung and Apple and Coca-Cola are at like 90 plus. But of course, that's years and years of proving to Google that they have good content, they're a reputable brand. And therefore now when they put a piece of content on, bam, it gets greenlit. That's why you see them everywhere. And they're like, I get it. They're like, okay, so, what would it take to get to 48? And I'm like, well, you won't reach that in a year. You're looking at probably 18 months to 2 years to even get close to that. But you need to do a serious amount. I would do 20 or 30 campaigns a month easily to be able to reach that. And then you factor in the competitive landscape in their niche, right? And how competitive it might be, and then bring that in, right? But can you see how when I go back to the pricing now, they've priced themselves, right? And that's the beautiful part of this process where, they're literally telling us that, hey, I want to, be at their level in 12 months. And you're like, probably not, not likely, because you'll have to produce stupid amounts of content. But if you did 8 to 10 pieces and you did 30 offsite campaigns and, like I said, 8 to 10 onsite, we can boost it as well. We can publish on MSN for you. That will increase your domain rating as well. MSN has a domain rating of around 100, which is amazing. And Premium Amps is our top tier distribution to sites like USA Today and Global Mail and things like that. And they will boost your domain rating even further. So that will get you to your goal faster. I would recommend, the 12,000 a month. Based on what you're saying, that's probably where it would be. But again, it's up to you. How fast you want to go, I'll leave it in your hands. And the magic words again are, to finish it off, is, you let me know where you'd like to take it from here. Here's the options. Now, you've made the case, you've shown the data, you've proven it beyond any doubt, and you've shown that you're not just pricing it up out of nowhere to get the most money out of them, which is what a lot of businesses do, and it's just a disgusting way to work. Let them price themselves based on their appetite for growth and their appetite for catching their competitors. Okay? So these are just dummy packages here, but you can price this up for whatever you like. But we do tend to start at around $4 to $6 grand a month minimum for our packages. And we warn the prospect about that on the first call. This is likely going to happen on the second call, what I'm showing you here. And you set them up for that and say, hey, if you're interested, I can do a full competitor analysis and show you some data in the next call. Totally up to you. And again, I break that down in the 60K in 6 months video, which you can check out. It's got call 1, 2, and 3 all laid out, so you can check that out. All right, so there it is. There's the competitor analysis gap close. Very powerful, proven. It works every time, because the one big thing that every single business owner wants to know is, what the fuck are my competitors doing? The ones that are kicking my ass, and how do I catch them as quickly as possible? It demystifies the whole thing, and it makes it real. So now that they know what they need to do, because it's almost a science, because you're not going to get more organic traffic unless you have more pages, and those pages won't rank unless you have more domain ratings and more domain authority. But then, of course, you need the quality of the content as well, because you need to make every page count. It's beautiful, and it works together. And we've seen, again, we don't price it up for our clients. And yes, you might get to a point where, or prospects, I should say, you might get to a point where the prospect says, well, you tell me you're the expert. And I'll be like, well, yes, I am, but it all depends on your business and how fast you want to catch your competitors. If you're someone who's like, well, I don't really care, let's just try and keep up with them a little bit. I don't really want to nip their heels. I'm not too concerned, but let's try and close the gap a little bit. I'll be like, yeah, sure, that's up to you. You tell me. But if you really want to go for it and catch them, the gap isn't that big, and you probably, and then I go back to the data and say, well, the gap probably isn't as big as you think it is, because if you want to catch ageless, right, yes, they've got 3,000 pages, but in about 2 years, you'll be able to do that. But you need to do this consistently and really go hell for leather. But Joy and Blokes, I reckon, 12 months, you'll be within reach. But we need to get started ASAP, because every day you wait is a day that they're adding pages to their site. And you can show the site and show how many posts they've done in the last few days. There's just no escape, right? Not in a bad way, but just, this isn't selling them. What I love about this process is you're not gaming, you're not using techniques or strategies, you're just showing data right in front of their face, just like a mirror, and showing them what's actually happening and the reality of the situation and what they'll need to do. And typically if they're running a lot of paid ads, then, we've got e-com businesses that spend 2 to 3 million a month on paid ads. So we'll typically say something like, that's totally cool. But again, if you want organic traffic, which brings you free buyers who are actually researching before they buy, you'll have to do this. And then I always ask them, well, because they'll say, yeah, we'll just run more ads. And I'm like, that's fine, but these guys are running ads too. So why are they, and they're getting organic traffic for free. They're doing both, right? Because the question becomes, what happens when someone sees your ad? Do they buy straight away? And they go, well, and I'm like, what's your conversion rate? They'll say, well, 1 to, 2%, 3%, 5% is unbelievable in e-com, for instance, right? Or in any industry, like, that's still decent from ads. And I'll say, okay, that's cool. But what happens to the other 95 to 97% of people? What, we just forget about them, right? What are they doing? And they're like, well, they'll typically go on YouTube and watch a video. Bam, we cover that. Or they'll go on Google and quickly research us or compare us to another reputable brand. If it's an exercise bike, it will be your brand exercise bike versus Peloton, for instance. And then they might go on ChatGPT and ask a question, about something. Are you featured in the LLMs? If you're not, you lose that sale to a competitor, and on and on. So that's 97%. And that, we call that the invisible chaos funnel, because that's the true way people are searching now. And guess what? Here's the interesting thing about that, right? Really important to keep in mind is that invisible chaos funnel. It can take someone, a couple of days to a couple of weeks to complete that journey before they make a buying decision. And they're looking at your Instagram profile. Do you have active posts? Do you not? Is it an active profile? Do you have regular posts, recent posts? And then they might go on something like, because some people like to go on Pinterest, like, are you, and with Amplify, we post everywhere. So we've got a solution to that. But then they understand, and I'm like, that's free buyer traffic from people who are actually researching and, almost ready to buy. And so are you capturing them at that point of research before they make that buying decision? And so then they're like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, that's what these guys are doing. That's why the traffic is so high and that's why they're blowing up, right? You should replace ads completely. No, you should do both, right? And that's the key to the future. So that was the $12,000 gap close. They price themselves, you just show them the gap, you watch them squirm, and you watch them price themselves, package themselves up, right? And if you want the entire sales process we use to smash these clients and stack $60,000 in 6 months, we're way beyond that now, but you can watch that video, $60,000 in 6 months, and watch the breakdown in another video within the channel here. And so if you want more videos like that and you found it useful, like, subscribe, all that jazz. So check it out. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.